oil exploration activities. This has made it very difficult for our people to survive, and we would like to, at this point, draw attention to some of the very depressing footages that we have about the spoliation of the environment through oil activities. I would like the media to see a typical day in Bayelsa State and the Niger Delta. What you have in the screen is oil flowing in the river in the Niger Delta. It's a typical spill site that you see on a daily basis. Can we see slide 2, the Santa Barbara pollution? This is the oil well that spilled so much toxin into the environment, first in 2019, and the same oil well also spilled materials into the environment, toxic materials into the environment in 2021 for about 38 days of continuous pollution of the environment. The interesting thing is that up to this moment, there has been no attempt to clean the environment or remediate the environment. Those are the issues that we face daily in Bayelsa State and the Niger Delta. That provides the background for the basis of this press conference. This press conference is to address, as I said, the issue concerning the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission report and the need for action. At this point, I would like to go straight to read the press statement. The Multinational Panel, BSOEC report on environmental genocide and the human cost of big oil in Bayelsa State of Nigeria. But before I read the press statement, I would like to invite a member of the commission who is connected online to give us a brief statement before we go ahead to read the press statement. We would like to invite a member of the commission to please go ahead, unmute, and give your statement, please. Can we increase the audio? No, just a moment. Just a moment. Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you now.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. My name is Catherine Wajaku-Dahu, and I am the chair of the expert working group of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission. So as our chair has already mentioned, the commission released its report some few weeks ago. And this report was the result of some 4 years' work. It is a commission of inquiry established by Bayelsa State law by the former government of Bayelsa State. I've put a link in the chat to the report itself, the official online version, which I hope you all have a chance to read. Just to say that I am the chair of an expert working group, and I am one of 5 other commissioners who were responsible for overseeing the research, for commissioning studies, for reviewing the extensive work that has already been done to document the systemic pollution in Bayelsa. We also listened and heard the voices of Bayelsans across the state. We organized evidence gathering sessions. There were, I think, about 3. We also organized town hall meetings in as many of the local government areas as we could possibly do. And we have used all that information, compiled it, also commissioned pieces of research by Bayelsans, by academics at the University of Port Harcourt, and a number of independent researchers. So the work was extensive. We had at least 1,000 pieces of evidence that we reviewed to bring, to collect our findings and make our recommendations. So what did we find? We found, and this will be no surprise to all of you, as you've seen from the video and as you live and breathe the environment within Bayelsa, we saw that toxic chemicals and metals from oil spills were present at levels far exceeding safe levels determined by the World Health Organization, making this an environmental and human health crisis. We had forensic scientists, internationals from Scotland, review work that already been done to verify that this evidence on toxic chemicals at levels exceeding the World Health Organization standards were present, not just in those parts of Bayelsa very close to intensive oil and gas infrastructure, but more broadly. We also found that this is clearly an environmental crisis. As I said at the beginning, you know, this is the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, and it touches on all aspects of environment, which are within the purview of the state of Bayelsa. And we noted that the environmental crisis is systemic, meaning this is not just the result of a catastrophe, a spill, an incident, but a systemic crisis based on constant levels of oil pollution. And we attribute this to neglect as a result of infrastructure that is not fit for purpose within the Bayelsa environment. So the environmental crisis that we identified is not just, this is not a climate study in and of itself. You know, this is because the reason why we focus in and on the environment is also because people's lives depend on it. They're farming, they're fishing in the rivers and waterways. All of this is polluted. And so people are ingesting the pollution through the food systems and the air that they breathe. And this is having devastating consequences on people's health. We commissioned a particular health study that looked at some of the results of this in a number of states, in a number of local government areas, we compared and contrasted health levels in places closest to pollution with those where oil infrastructure was less present. And it's clear that we found that there is a particular issue that is intensified in areas where there are intense oil and gas production activities. So pollution is systemic of different kinds. It's not the result of an accident, it's long-term, dripping. But there are also different kinds of pollution. So you have oil spills, and you also have effluent waste disposal in rivers and waterways, unregulated disposal of drilling muds and sludge, gas flaring that's persistent, and even with all the reforms that have been attempted, penalties are not severe enough to really bring that down to levels that are in line with international standards. We also cite the arbitrary destruction of artisanal refineries that has pollution consequences. You know, many of those who would like to claim that the fault is not that of the oil operators, but this is a result of sabotage and artisanal refining. We acknowledge that those things exist, but we also note, and this is a really strong observation in the report, that the way in which those refineries are destroyed is a pollution disaster in itself, and the question of responsibility really falls in the hands of the operators, notwithstanding the existence of what they call third-party interference. But we argue that if oil infrastructure was sufficiently and effectively protected, which is the purview of oil operators, then we wouldn't be in a situation where we are today. And we also argue that there is a serious problem in terms of the way attribution for oil-related damage is identified, so that the whole joint venture, joint investigation visit mechanism is highly skewed in favor of the oil companies. Why? Because it is their infrastructure that is relied upon by the different parties that make up that joint investigation visit. And so the results, how those visit reports are signed off, is intrinsically biased in favor of the companies. And even, we argue, even if one could suggest that third-party interference was to blame, by Nigerian law, oil companies are still responsible for cleanup, and there are questions to answer around negligence. Because if you're able and willing to extract and produce oil, you need to be able and willing to protect your facilities in a way that makes them less exposed to any kind of interference. So we argue that there's a deep liability question that needs to be addressed, and we argue for a reform that would allow polluter pays as a principle to be enshrined, and also no fault liability, right? And so finally, there are many findings in the report, but I'm just summarizing. So we also find that remediation, rehabilitation of lands and waterways and mangroves that are make up Africa's largest wetlands. We argue that any claims to clean up or rehabilitate or remediate need to be seriously further investigated. We argue that any cleanup has been insufficient, it has been erratic or non-existent. And all of this has had devastating consequences on biodiversity, you know, in an area, the part of the world that is, you know, the largest wetlands. And so a very important carbon sink. You know, we are in a climate crisis right now. And so even if for reasons beyond the health and life of Bayelsans, you know, one could say, okay, you know, well, this systemic pollution can still go on. But even for the world, for the global community, it is unacceptable to leave this systemic pollution of the world's largest wetlands untouched. So what is to be done, right? So we in the Commission are arguing for the need for a recovery plan. This must be priority. And we are actually putting a figure on it. We say that no less than £12 billion over 12 years is required for, you know, for us to be really able to tackle the need for environmental cleanup and rehabilitation. We argue this needs to be comprehensive and must include health monitoring and must redress and invest in alternative socio-economic opportunities for the people of Bayelsa. Because, you know, ultimately we say that, you know, even if you clean up, even if you rehabilitate, we can't blind ourselves to the moment in time that this is taking place, when Nigeria, like other countries, are going to have to grapple with just transitions, ultimately away from oil and gas and towards more renewables. And we think that there's an opportunity here to, you know, there's no way that historical wrongs can be righted, but if there is serious and ambitious investment in creating social economic opportunities that make Bayelsa stand out for something else, and you know, pin Bayelsan futures to the future, which is renewables rather than oil and gas. Who will pay for this then? We are calling on oil companies, the operators, you know, because the oil companies will always push back and say, oh, you know, this is a joint venture. We're in joint ventures. We acknowledge that the Nigerian stakes in oil, all the ventures exist. But, you know, as operators and holders of licenses, we believe that the multinationals, the oil companies, be they their subsidiaries, we put them all in the same bag, need to be called upon to play a central role in admitting their share of responsibility and putting their words into meaningful action. We believe they need to pay each according to degree of responsibility, needs to pay their share of that 12 billion as a start. And, you know, we don't believe that the investments that companies have made in other initiatives mean that they should get off the hook. This is an environmental catastrophe in Bayelsa that we're seeing. And the sooner the world wakes up to the degree of catastrophe, the better for all of us. So we're calling also on the Nigerian government to act and to strengthen both the funding and the powers of regulators and the role of state governments and in bringing companies to book for their failings. You know, Nigeria went through the last 20 years of trying to pull together what became the Petroleum Industry Act. But, you know, in terms of the powers of regulators, the power of the Ministry of Environment, we were disappointed. We were disappointed in terms of where that thing landed. And we still believe there's much to be done in enabling regulators to have serious power to hold those responsible for the operations to account. You know, I think there are problems with mixed incentives, you know, that always weigh against the capacity of regulators to really do their job. And we believe the state government also has to use the powers that it already has in terms of the environment, in terms of rights of way, to greater effect. So we're calling as well on all Western governments, notably, Shell is now, domiciled exclusively in the UK. We believe, and that's why we launched the report in the House of Lords, we believe that the UK government needs to sit up and start to bring its companies under control in terms of moral and ethical responsibilities. There are a number of other governments that already started to go in this direction. France, the Netherlands itself, the EU has just brought out very important due diligence law. It's very interesting that this is happening now, and we believe that the UK government, as well as the Italian government, where any AGIP is domiciled, needs to step up. And we're calling on a concerted action internationally. This is not just the problem of Bayelsans, even though they live and breathe and have their life chances reduced because of it. We believe the responsibility is collective, and so the action needs to be international and collective. Without that, the report will just be like all the other commissions, all the other reports that have sat on shelves and not done very much. We think that there is an important opportunity here that we really need to take full advantage of. And we could discuss that. Our reports may provide some evidence for other courses of action, legal, but that's not really within the mandate or purview of the Commission. But we hope that we've pulled together a significant body of evidence to start to challenge, to enable the companies and governments involved to sit up and really take notice. We would ultimately like to see justice done for the people of Bayelsa without necessarily court action. And as I said, we want to see the no fault liability principle, that low liability principle and the polluter pays principle institutionalized, so that that the onus doesn't come on the victims of said pollution to prove neglect on the part of the companies, which is the situation we are in now, in order to get redress or compensation. So we're arguing also for an alternative dispute resolution mechanism and funds to support access to legal redress and justice within Nigeria. So I want to finish by just saying, that this report is the result of the tireless efforts of Bayelsa's people to tell their story. All we did, we listened and listened and listened and reviewed many reports. We commissioned reports. We would like to thank all those people, those 1,600 people who one Christmas, in a context of serious insecurity, came out, allowed themselves to have blood samples taken from them so that blood could be analyzed and the beginnings, we weren't able to do something that's comprehensive. The beginnings of a health screening could begin to take place. I want to thank all those people who believed in this commission to be more than an instrument, but to really be something that could start to change the lives of people. So it's to those people and all those people who came, spoke to us, traveled from far, listened to us, invited us into their places, their local government. This report is for them. And so we would really like to see this report begin to make some change. And we think that this report is for all of us to explore how we can use it, how we can take our responsibility seriously for moving forward some of the recommendations. The next steps for us as a commission, we've done our work. We were mandated to write this report, to make recommendations. We hope in July, we haven't fixed a date yet, to come to Bayelsa to share this report, to present it back to the people of Bayelsa, and then explore collectively with all those who are interested in making change, how we together and individually can do that. We would love the oil companies to step up and come and really discuss, not just refute our findings or our recommendations, but really come and start to discuss. The time is over for arguing about the detail. Anyone coming to Bayelsa, you do not need to do a health screening of 1,600 people or spend 4 years documenting evidence to know what is in front of your eyes. But we did it, so we have the evidence that will support any efforts to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've heard from the chair of the technical committee of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, Catherine Nwajoku. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the work of the commission, which is the basis of this press conference. Before we go ahead with reading the press statement, I would like to appreciate the other physical location that we have in Yenegua at this point, at the ERA office. And I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to hear from them after the press statement, and it's time for us to take comments, because we have some of our leaders also seated there. And all those that are connected online, we thank you for your patience. I will read the press statement. The multinational panel, Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, reports on environmental genocide and the human costs of big oil in Bayelsa State of Nigeria. Joint press conference to demand implementation by the governor of Bayelsa State and the president of Nigeria. Held at the MUSON Center, Unikon, Lagos on Wednesday, 14th June 2023, by the coalition of Ijaw interest groups and other critical stakeholders in the environmental sector. News of the recent release on 16th May 2023 of the long-awaited report of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission was received with hope by the people of Bayelsa State and the communities of the Niger Delta in general. The hybrid international panel, chaired by the former Archbishop of York and now member of the UK House of Lords, Lord John Sentamu, was set up 4 years ago to look into and recommend remedies to the devastation caused by the oil and gas industry on the environment, social economy, and human lives of Bayelsa State, which is a snapshot of the situation in the Niger Delta region. A catastrophe continuing since commercial oil production started in Nigeria within present-day Bayelsa State in 1956. Firstly, we commend the Commission for a job very well done, and the Bayelsa State government for the launch of the report. We also acknowledge that the report is a step in the right direction and an opportunity for useful insights to the destruction of the ecosystem in the region, but hasten to caution, just like the chair of the technical committee did, that it is still far from being an achievement. The urgent and faithful implementation of these recommendations is what will indeed show a commitment to achieve the intended objectives and crystallize the huge significance of the report. This coalition of Ijaw interest groups and other key stakeholders have no doubt that the burden of making this happen is primarily upon the Bayelsa state government. The state government must now move with the required sense of urgency, mindful that stakeholders in the state will consider the vigor, speed, and resourcefulness with which the government responds to the recommendations of this report. The report is aptly titled Environmental Genocide. The human and environmental cost of big oil in Bayelsa, Nigeria. The study reports that about 110 to 165 million gallons of crude oil have spilled in the state over the last 50 years, amounting to 10 to 15 times the volume of the Exxon Valdez spill, which was 11 million gallons, that devastated the Alaskan coastline in 1989. It reports that for the state's population, currently projected at about 2.5 million, the cumulative spill volume translates to each resident suffering an average share of 1.5 barrels of oil spilled with the attendant impact. In some locations, toxic contaminants such as chromium are present in the groundwater over 1,000 times the World Health Organization's limit for safety. We all had the chair of the technical committee in a brief statement attest to these facts. In addition to the alarming data for gas flaring in the state, the report also quotes research that puts at 16,000 the number of infants killed by prenatal exposure to oil spills within a month of birth. These indices of pathology are a threat to the continued existence of the Ijaw indigenous nationality and the physical integrity of our homeland, and could therefore provoke any affected population into self-help, where the governments, regulators, and justice systems that should secure and rescue them have either failed them or in some cases appear to be in collaboration with the genocidal polluters. The release of the report at a time the world is realizing that climate change implications must be mainstreamed into every decision making is symbolic. It should reawaken us, government, the private sector, community leaders. Can I have the mic? the release of the report at this time. The release of the report at this time, the world is realizing that climate change implications must be mainstreamed into every decision making is symbolic. It should reawaken us, that is the government, the private sector, the community leaders, and the citizens, to our sacred responsibilities to our planet and the unborn generations. The Bayelsa state government, the federal government, the ministers of petroleum and environment, and the regulators, NOSDRA particularly, that have brushed aside and overlooked these dangerous and destructive pollution, slowly killing people in the region and desecrating the ecosystem, now have a core duty and a responsibility to bring this environmental genocide to an immediate stop. It is important to highlight that the report said, and we quote, "Much of the responsibility of the current crisis must be borne by the IOCs, whose activities from the period of British colonial rule up to the present time have inflicted much damage upon Bayelsa. But the failures of the oil producers are themselves rooted in a set of deeper institutional, legal, and political problems that must be addressed if the pollution crisis is to be tackled on a sustainable basis." While the oil companies and their complicit or inept regulators are directly culpable, the Bayelsa state government has the primary sacred duty to resist the toxic impacts. We encourage and challenge the state government to slay this monster of petroleum genocide once and for all. It was expected that the state government would, at the launch of the report, make concrete announcements of specific actions already taken and to be taken to decisively deal with the plague. In the 4 years of waiting for the Commission's report, the state government appears to have done little or nothing in combating the scourge which kept occurring, not only routinely, as usual, but also in outrageous dimensions on several occasions. Some examples are the Ajib facilities that drenched Lasukugbene and its surroundings with crude oil for weeks in the year 2021. Corn oil carelessly spewed oil and gas repeatedly for extended periods in the Akasa axis in the same year. Shell has not only soaked Ikarama community in spills during the period, but has had NOSDRA issue clean-up certificates for sites that still contain ponds of spilled oil. That is how outrageous the situation is. And the Atio group, and the Atio group that took over some oil fields and facilities in allegedly hazardous states from Shell was hosts of the catastrophic Santa Barbara oil field blowout that lasted for 5 to 6 weeks in the year 2021, which was one of the clips that we played at the beginning of this press conference. The lack of any serious signal or action by the state government on any of these disasters or at the launch of the Bayelsa report is quite disappointing. This is no time for tepid speeches, platitudes, and promises, but a time for action by the state government. The Bayelsa people and the communities will be served well if the government can immediately demonstrate to the international environmental community, governments, commitments to immediately take remedial action rather than mere endless talk without actions and policies of consequence that will be instantly and critically felt by pollution culprits, devastated communities, and the entire chain of local and global stakeholders. In driving the implementation of the report, we strongly recommend the following supporting actions to also be taken by the Bayelsa state government and or the federal government and other stakeholders where appropriate. Number one, an immediate formal demand to the president by the state government to immediately promulgate a Niger Delta-wide environmental remediation program. Several environmentally damaged communities due to oil and gas exploration activities, such as Polobobo in the west of the Niger Delta, abound. Number two, impose stern sanctions within the state's power, including revocation of rights of way and land leases over operational sites of repeated or egregious environmental breaches. 3. Commit to dedicating 5 to 10% of Bayelsa State's revenue to invest as part of the Environmental Recovery Fund proposed in the Commission's report, to redress its contributory responsibility for the pollution plague by reason of the state government's failure in acting within its power all these years to stop the scourge and safeguard its communities, environment, and people. The state will reap commensurately and multidimensionally from the fruits of the recovery fund. Number 4, formally institute a strong call or a global campaign on shareholders of Shell, Eni, Ijaw, Chevron, and other operators and other parent companies listed in the London, New York, and European stock exchanges to demand for verifiable, comprehensive reports on their environmental pollution footprints in the Niger Delta and remedial measures taken, including the environmental status of their oil fields at the time of divesting them to Nigerian private operators. Failing that, shareholders should be systematically persuaded to divest shares in these companies, as their over 60-year track record in Nigeria renders their shareholders partakers in the business of blood oil. Their own governments should as well be officially engaged to trigger investigations and sanctions on these operations and operators. 5. Pending consummation of ongoing efforts at the International Convention on Ecocide, file a formal complaint with the Office of the Prosecutor in the International Criminal Court to investigate the unprecedented ecocide in Bayelsa State as environmental genocide or a continual crime against humanity. This is urgent because successive Nigerian presidents and ministers of petroleum and environment, along with the regulatory agencies under their supervision, including most incumbents in those offices, are deeply complicit by commission or omission in the fossil fuel industry's ecocide in the Niger Delta. They have been conditioned by the Nigerian system to never feel any incentive to act. 6. Appoint and capacitate a Bayelsa State Special Counsel on Environmental Justice Enforcement with adequate provisioning and periodic public reporting obligations. 7. Appoint and make suitable provisions for an honorary grand patron or a goodwill ambassador of the environment that will leverage international contacts, global social capital, and cognate institutions to actualize an environmental master plan for the state, indeed the Niger Delta region. I would like to add that Bayelsa State is not in short supply of eminent people to carry on this responsibility. 8. NDDC and IPREP. The federal government should properly fund, stabilize, and sanitize these two agencies. That is the Niger Delta Development Commission and Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project that are vested with statutory mandates for the environmental sustainability and remediation of the Niger Delta, or for IPREP, the Ogoni area of the region. Most people don't realize that one of the main responsibility of NDDC concerns the environment. Both bodies have been trailed for years by reports and scandals of entrenched corruption, vested external interests or interferences, substandard execution of projects, ghost contracts, and subverted tendering / procurement processes, budgetary abnormalities, plus series of arbitrary illegal appointments and removal of their executives. The new federal administration should beam a searchlight on these important organizations to arrest the recurrent travesties and reposition them in accordance with the enabling laws for full delivery of their objectives, including the ecological mandates of NDDC. The functional failure or unabated drift of either or both would create huge setbacks for any expectations of satisfactory environmental remediation and social recovery in the region and through the region into a tailspin. The specter and its implications for Nigeria should be a cause of concern to all, home and abroad. As we conclude, we would like to talk on the inadequacy of the proposed recovery fund. Finally, we consider the BALSEC's recommendation of $12 billion for the Bayelsa State Recovery Fund to be grossly underestimated. And we say this with all responsibility, because you need to go around the Niger Delta to see the level of devastation of the environment in Bayelsa State and other parts of the region. In cognizance of the cumulative length, volumes, and impact of the petroleum sector's environmental genocide in Bayelsa, the estimate must be carefully reviewed for adequacy by the state government and key parties. The people of Bayelsa State expect the brisk, faithful execution of the Lord Centermu reports, action points, and to hear particularly from the federal government and the Bayelsa State government without further delay. Let us stop the talk and clean up the oil wasteland. Yes, indeed, Bayelsa State is an oil wasteland as we speak. Only then can our people trust our governments. We invite all people of conscience to please join your voices and efforts to this cause. Thank you for your attention. Signed, Izon-Ebi, Secretary, Ijaw Elders Forum, Lagos. Mr. Ben Amaibi Okoro, Moderator, Ijaw Nation Forum. Chief Amagbe Denzel Kentebe, BOT Chairman, Embasara Foundation. Miss Ankyo Briggs, BOT Chairperson, Ijaw Women Connect. Mr. Patterson Boleya, President, Ijaw Professionals Association, IPA Lagos. Honorable Iniro Wills, President, Homeland Chapter, Ijaw Professionals Association. Professor Monday Selegold, President, Ijaw Diaspora Council, IDC. Comrade Alagwa Morris, Program Manager, Stroke Head, ERA Niger Delta Resource Center, Yenegwa. Kemeden Giyefa Opia, Chairman, Bayelsa NGOs Forum. And Lanre Siraju, Chairman, Human and Environmental Development Agenda, EDA. There are several other organizations that are in support of this press statement. And we want to appreciate you for your patience and your time. Thank you. Before we entertain questions, I would like very brief remarks from the chairman of today's press briefing and our learned silk and the former Commissioner of Information, Rivers State, Dr. Tam George. Chairman.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have heard not only from a spokesperson of the Commission who took us through their investigation and their report. I must commend them, and I should also say here that we must commend the government of Bayelsa State at that time, who initiated this lofty commission to come in place. It's not that the results were not known to us. We all could see, but it helps when we have a commission of international standard come into our environment, take a look, and give us a report we can take anywhere so that implementations can commence immediately. We have also listened to the carefully crafted statement by the coalition. The coalition is made up of a lot of Ijaw organizations and Niger Delta groups. While we're talking about Bayelsa, I want to say that there is nothing we are saying here that does not also pertain to the Niger Delta, even though it's a Bayelsa commissioned report. Same thing is happening in all areas of the Niger Delta, and maybe even worse. As we have said, this is not a time to talk. This is a time for action. And we do call on the federal government and the state government to use its existing powers to ensure that the people of Bayelsa State, in particular, and the people of the Niger Delta in general, are not killed, and I use that word very carefully, are not killed by the pollution caused by oil exploration in our region. We call on the international community to see this as also their responsibility. We have seen a lot of oil spill all over the world, and we have seen the immediate responses by those governments. People of Bayelsa State are no different. We're human beings, and we must and should be treated like human beings. You cannot continue to degrade our own environment, and some people continuously laugh to the bank with proceeds of oil exploration, when we have, according to this report, over 1,500 infants yearly die in the first few months of birth. If nothing else concerns us, that should concern each and every one of us. Whether you are from the Niger Delta, whether you are a Nigerian, or wherever you come from in the world, that is not acceptable. So I'd like to stop here so we can have more time for questions, and I'll still come to talk. But I'd like to say that what we're doing today is calling for urgent action. And we hope that those that are responsible, the federal government, the state government, the IOCs, the international community, will see this as a challenge. If not, we know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would like to invite Leonard Silk to give us a word.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony George E. Coley. I'm a Nigerian. I'm a member of the world community. For me, this is a very, very sobering moment. because I thought I was coming just to participate in a press conference, but I have stumbled on real-time ecocide and genocide taking place in Nigeria. Bayelsa State is just the locale, but these affects, and this is an affliction on humanity. This, without putting a spin on it, is real-time Holocaust. It is the search for wealth, and in the process, the wiping out of a people. Let us not pretend. Let us not put a spin on it. Let us not butter up what is happening. This matter, the agitation for environmental remediation is as old as the Nigerian state. Nigeria is just about 66 or 67 years old, or post-independence. From 56, when they began to explore and exploit oil, the consequences have been known and have been felt. But there has been some grand conspiracy by the majorities, because Bayelsa or the Ijaw land is just their farmland to reap, and nobody cares about the people. I have not read the report in detail, but I am very, very privileged to have listened this afternoon to the chair of the expert committee, and what she has said, or what she took us through, the statistics and the recommendations are what should sober anybody with should I say, feelings. It is impossible to talk about oil in Nigeria without being emotional, because for some it represents wealth, whereas for the people in whose territories these are being drilled, for them it represents an unending nightmare. Now, I am taking away from the lady's recommendations or her exposition the fact that she is calling for a collective human response, not just Bayelsa, not just Nigeria, but the international community as well, because a segment of humanity is being wiped out daily, and nothing is being done. In the lead up to the elections, the current president, His Excellency Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu, went to the Delta. He went to see one of the foremost Ijaw agitators, Tom Polo. And ever since, he has made oil theft a cardinal, or the elimination of oil theft, a cardinal agenda of his government. But when you eliminate oil theft, whilst oil theft elimination is good, what is better would be elimination of the pollution that eliminates the people in whose territory you are mining the oil. To eliminate oil theft and not to remediate the environment or place the welfare of the people in whose territory you are mining at par with your policy to eliminate oil theft smacks of lack of care for the people in whose territory you are mining the oil. What would profit a man to make money or to enrich the Nigerian state at the expense of the lives of some people? Ijaw lives matter. Bayelsa matters. We should not be seen as just a repository or a place for mining wealth for the sustenance of others. Our lives matter. Our people may be a minority. We may not be able to talk, but there's always a day for the thief and also a day for the owner. The time has come for the owners to get up and unison call upon the conscience of the world. And I guess this report demonstrates that there is need for humanity to have a concerted, collective action to prevent the ongoing genocide in the Delta. The Nigerian state will not rest in peace. Indeed, it might come to pieces if it does not take steps to remediate the genocide, the killing, the murdering of Ijaw people. These are the actions that breed agitation, that breed restiveness, that breed restlessness, that breed criminals, in quotes. This report presents an opportunity for all the authorities, all the agencies, all the organs, all the governments to act in unison to put a stop to this continuing nightmare. The oil companies have made billions. The people have rigged, the people have benefited in the negative. Go to the Delta and see what they call poverty. I have been to Oloibri, and if anyone tells you that this place has given Nigeria a cover, you will not believe it. The level of poverty, the level of despair, the level of how does one describe the hopelessness of a people? How? It's like an ungoverned space. There is no presence of government. Abuja is a fantasy. It is a steel and cement and boulevards and parks and gardens and roads. Where you derived the money for the erection of these fantasies, that place is like what I've described, is a wasteland. So government policies have created wastelands, and the people are in penury. We should not wait for insurrection before we begin our usual palliatives. This report calls on all of us to act in brotherhood. It is only fair. It is only fair. What is every society? We pray for it to be anchored on justice, on equity, on fairness. What is happening now is unfair, is unjust, is inequitable. It will not go away. They can pretend. Please, I join my voice to all other patriots in seeking governmental intervention. The federal government, I'm happy that there's a new government in place. Perhaps they will listen, because I know that the head of this government is someone who has been engaged in struggle for a very long time. And perhaps he would adopt this as a personal struggle to right the wrongs of centuries. I thank the organizers of this press conference. It is very, very timely. It is very, very, very needed and required. I thank all the attendees. I thank our chairman. I thank our women folk. I thank our Ijaws in Lagos. I thank those who are listening. Please, it is it is time for action, as they say. No more talk. I thank you all. And may the gods of the Delta give the authorities the imagination and the creative energies to tackle this humongous assault on a segment of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonard Silk. Okay. I would have loved to, okay, maybe we'll take questions. We'll have the opportunity for, okay. Yeah, very, it's a big issue. So, Doctor, we'll take a word from Doctor, we'll take a word from Mr. Makiuruki, and then we'll hear from our other center, that is in Yenegua. Then we'll take questions and answer. We'll try and make the talk as brief as possible.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the media. This is an existential problem, a very serious problem. It's been on for so many years, since 1956, when commercial exploration started. For us in the Niger Delta, this is a very, very serious problem. I fully adopt the recommendations of this press conference. I only want to add that in addition to the actions that already have been stipulated here in the press statement, I think that the state governments have a very serious role to play in revamping and updating environmental laws within their states. You know, sometimes I think we place disproportionate attention on environmental structures at the federal level, which is good. But we have state governors who have sworn to protect the lives of their own people, and this is an environmental matter you know, that has direct existential impact on their own people. Thank you. Thank you. So I have been in government, and I can tell you that there are very serious legal lapses and outdated legislations at the state levels. I believe that if the federal government has a Ministry of Environment, all states have ministries of environment for a reason. But surprisingly, a lot of the legislations are outdated. The ministries of environment are not active. I think that the kind of problems that we face require us to go back to our domestic legal structures and try to activate those structures, update the laws, and try to impose sanctions where we should. I think this is a direct challenge to the state governors, not just in Bayelsa, but across the region. I want to quickly share the chairman, Kentebe's statement about this matter not just simply being a Bayelsa matter. I agree that Bayelsa is just the focus today, but it, you know, all the things we are saying here have resonance for all the states that constitute the Niger Delta. So a lot of the things we are saying here apply to Rivers State, where I am from, apply to Akwa Ibom State, Imo State, and the rest of those 9 states that constitute what we now know as the oil-producing community. So this is a very important matter that has direct impact on over 30 million people. The statement says something about Bayelsa's population being estimated to be about 2.5 million. But in fact, The kind of things we are talking about have direct existential impact on over 30 million people, and everywhere in the world where there is an impact, on human beings of that size, it's a matter that is very serious. So I endorse fully the sentiments already expressed by my colleagues here on the high table. And I have to say a special thanks to the chairman of the technical committee, who did a very fantastic work summarizing the report. And I believe that where government fails to act, civil society groups will continue to activate civil society structures to make sure action is taken. The final point I would like to make is that we are not as helpless as sometimes we think. There are UN conventions to which Nigeria is a signatory. I'm sure the senior advocate here will confirm that. There are UN conventions to which Nigeria is a signatory that ultimately protect the waterways and sources of livelihood of indigenous people. So where the governments, both at the state level and the federal level, refuse to act, I think we have sufficient knowledge, sufficient capacity to activate international conventions to protect indigenous people. So we are not as helpless as we sometimes suspect. There are things we can do working with UN structures. You all know, for instance, that the UNEP that is responsible for the cleanup of Ogoni land has come in because local authorities, including the federal government, refuse to act. So we can resort to the same, international alliance, build international alliances. Luckily, there is now a very great, global awareness on climate change. I would think that climate change discussions are actually coming a bit late. We have been at the forefront of this agitation for environmental stewardship since 1956. But as late as the discussion on climate change is, it strengthens our discourse here at home to say we want greater environmental stewardship, we want greater environmental protection, and ultimately we also want greater UN protection for indigenous people who are ultimately affected by the kind of environmental impact we are seeing. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to a very fruitful conversation.
Will at this time like Mr. Makiruki to give us his brief comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the high table. My brief comment is first to thank Bayelsa and the Bayelsa state government and the organizers of this program. The problem we are talking about is beyond Bayelsa. My brother just talked, he's from River State, I'm from Delta State. And the problem is more pronounced in Delta State than any other state. But the state government only collect the money from oil operations, and they never bothered what is going on. My own community is worst affected by these environmental problems. And how did it begin? It began by Chevron coming into our environment in the 70s. They were to operate in our area with an oil well called Upuekaba platform. Because it's inside the creek, they needed to bring in bigger equipment. So they dug our river down to the Atlantic and brought in these equipments. They didn't block the canal. Now the canal has become a problem. Our environment used to be freshwater environment with the rainforest, you have timber and all the things. Now all the trees have died, all the animals have gone. The Atlantic Ocean now bring in mud to the environment. So a river that was as deep as 7-meter draft now is turned up to 3 feet. You can't move about with any boat again. This is in Delta State. The Delta State government never bothered. They had not set up any commission, and yet they keep on receiving money, all in the name of oil money. It's perhaps another, worse again in Ondo State. So this matter is not just an Ijaw matter. It's worse in Ondo State. The canal that was dug into the Atlantic, through that, the sea started heating up the land. So our neighbors, the larger people who were almost 5 kilometers far away, are now at our backyard because the sea is encroaching to their land. All their original towns are now in the Atlantic. I don't think Ondo State government ever bothered to see how they can solve this problem. So I think the first call we will do is align with my brother, Dr. Tam, to see that the state governments wake up and invoke some domestic laws. It's not just environmental laws. These things go beyond environmental laws. I know what happened in Lagos. We have maritime laws enacted by the federal government, but Lagos State also domesticated their own laws. And today, you have the Lagos maritime law being operated by them. So I believe that we should call on all other state governments to collaborate with Bayelsa state government and see how we can solve this problem as a group of people who are under threat. Because me, each time I wake up, I'm afraid. If all the larger communities go into the Atlantic, the next thing is my own community might likely also go into the Atlantic. And so we call on Delta state government to emulate Bayelsa state government. I've been to Rivers State. A lot of the communities that are producing oil, petroleum product today are in the same bad situation. You never have a governor going to visit those communities. The governors only drive to a place where road will stop them. They commission one useless program and go away. So it is a national problem. It is a Niger Delta problem. It is a world problem. I'm aware of a lot of study that has been done by United Nations. So I think we will tag on this report we have and call on all the state governors to emulate Bayelsa state governor. Thank you.
At this point, we would like to appreciate the presence of representatives from Ijaw Women Connect and one of the foremost journalists from Bayelsa State, Mr. Emmanuel Okara. Thank you for coming. We would like to invite our center in Bayelsa State, that is in Yenegua, to quickly give us a comment from Honorable Iniro Wills. If you are there, give us a brief comment from Yenegua before we go into the question and answers quickly.
Thank you to everyone that has spoken today. Everyone has been quite eloquent on the issues, so there's not much for me to add. From this center, we'd also like to get Alagwa Morris, perhaps the leading environmental field monitor in the region, and I can make a few comments speaking to some images. But before he does that, and anyone else from this center will speak, I just want to, in addition to what all have said, to bring this down to the question of governance, leadership, responsibility. So it's like a football team or football game. And if you don't have a captain, or if the captain is not doing his job, and if the goalkeeper is not doing his job, then you're going to have unlimited goals being scored against that team. While we are blaming the oil companies because they are the primary culprits, it's important to locate the role of leadership and governance, because otherwise we will keep talking till thy kingdom come. And it is important that the commission, in their reports, also defined the underlying role of institutional breakdown in leading, in causing the ecocide disease in the region. And so the report points to underlying institutional, political, regulatory, and governance issues, and indeed legal issues, our legal system, without which this problem will not go away. So I want to join others to encourage, if not indeed challenge, those who are the gatekeepers and goalkeepers of our society. So at the Nigerian level, it is the president. President Bola Tinubu has to do what his predecessors have failed to do. At the Bayelsa state level, while we commend the state government for taking the initiative, because this is right after the UNEP report on Ogoniland, this is the next biggest report on the environment in the Niger Delta. So we commend the state government, but it is the duty of the Bayelsa state government, and in particular, the Bayelsa governor, to ensure the enforcement of the recommendations in this report. So if this report is not implemented, if 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we can still show the kind of videos that we have now, it means that the president has failed at the national level. And it means that whoever is the individual that is governor of Bayelsa State, or with respect to River State, whoever is the governor has also failed. So you have to take, and it is a privilege actually to be the one to have that responsibility to change the story of your people. It is 1 month since this report was released, and we really expected that already a lot should already have started to happen. We are not seeing that. So we are looking forward to action this time, not just talk. So it is down to leadership at the national level, at the state level, and I am pointing to specific individuals who have that privilege and onerous responsibility to discharge. And at the community level, also very important, leadership, whoever are the traditional rulers and the community leaders, the Amayana boss, the Obas, it is their responsibility. And I want to close this by reference to what President Barack Obama did. We were all witness to it. The 2010 Gulf of Mexico Deepwater Horizon blowout. The President of America, 4 times, sleeves rolled up, took up personal responsibility and made sure that he pinned BP and Transocean and the other companies down. So within days, they have compelled them to set aside $20 billion before we even start to do assessments and so on. Within days of that incident happening. And I'm wondering, which president of Nigeria or which governor in Nigeria is more important than the president of America, that they are not able to fold their sleeves and say, let us take on this bull by the horn. So it's down to, and indeed at the community level. So if this is continuing, it means that the goalkeeper of the country is failing. It means the goalkeeper of the states is failing. It means the goalkeeper of the particular community is also failing. It's very important for us to be able to speak these home truths to ourselves. I'd like to quickly pass on to Alaga Morris and maybe one more from our center and make some comments. But Alaga Morris needs to speak to some of the image we have in the background there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasant coincidence that this report actually came from Bayelsa State, that the Bayelsa State government set up the commission. In 2014, NOSRA, the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, did make public that Bayelsa State is the most polluted. And if we juxtapose what NOSRA stands for, you know they are talking about oil industry-induced pollution. And so the empire actually mentioned Bayelsa as most polluted in 2014. I've been to Sakalawo during my field monitoring, Tologubo now, and what Chief Matthew Rocky was saying here is actually the fact. Some journalists here, like Chief Olabi of Reuters and others, we've been there, and I want to thank the media over the years for what they've been doing, because with the media, even our documentation wouldn't have gone so far. Our website for the environmental rights action have been hacked twice, leading to us losing our archives. So those that have been reported and that are online, they are still there as per third-party reporter. So we have done quite a lot in terms of monitoring, like Honorable Barrister was mentioned. Let me also say that before he left as Commissioner for Environment in the state, Bayelsa here, his ministry, which he led, was actually working with the judiciary. It's not about in the judiciary to come up with good laws, like our brother from Rivers State mentioned here. If we are actually working towards coming with effective laws, even to revoke certificate of occupancy for pipeline operators. But before we knew it, it was out of office. We regretted it. Now, some of the images here, especially this one. This is the practice on how to use that side to hold. Hello? The other side. Yes, and so because the person, because he doesn't have balance on his own, yeah. So the person has to still guide in between. And the person will hold his shoulder, not the hands. Dragging that hand will be flapping the face. Hello? Hello? Yeah. Here is a picture of a family that was trying to escape from crude oil fire that happened in the 90s. And they are carrying, the father is carrying 2 children and the mother carrying 1. One of them here, being carried by the mother, eventually died from falling into crude oil flooded water right in front of their house. A lovely child. And we have another picture here. A young cassava farm flooded with crude oil. And immediately this happened, we visited. We took pictures, took videos, but in 3-4 days' time, when the oil company Shell visited, Shell was asking, you say there's a crude oil in the farm, where is the crude oil? They didn't find any crude oil because it has seeped into the ground. Now, that is one thing with our environment. Either the water takes it, spreads it towards the Atlantic Ocean, or it seeps through the ground. And the oil companies will come with all sorts of arguments. And so, this report is very timely. It will be a reference point, and it will actually increase our advocacy. I want to thank founders of environmental groups that have been funding us, and even the media. And these organizers of this press conference, I want to thank you all. Shows that the efforts that we've been putting in the field have never been in vain. All what we have been reporting, complaining about the impacts, we've now come to see it documented. Scientifically, evidence-based report has come out. So I want to thank all those who have worked towards this report. It is going to be something that we'll work on, and like others have spoken, we want action on this report. We want environmental audit, comprehensive cleanup, remediation, and compensation to victims of oil industry-induced pollution. Thank you.
Sorry. My name is Izon-Ebi. Mine is just like a suggestion of information. The money being granted, the lady who summarized, it was pounds, it was dollar, and even the secretary text also said naira. So we should use it in proper perspective, like naturally quoted. Thank you.
Please, can we hear from the Bayelsa NGOs forum? Yeah, can I welcome Comrade Remediation to the one area? Please, you take the
Clearly, we want to thank everyone who have been part of this for the last 3 years. We think that at this point in time, what we're interested in is action. So what we intend to do clearly is to work with others to ensure that everything we need to do within our own capabilities, resources, and network we're going to do to ensure we have justice for our own people. Like others have spoken, this is not the time to speak plenty grammar. It's the time to work together, to collaborate with partners and ensure that we learn from what has happened in the Ogoni land, where till today we still have issues with the cleanup, despite the fact that billions and billions of naira have been spent. We want it to be very strategic in Bayelsa, and we want an immediate action. I want to align with everyone who has spoken, and the Bayelsa NGO Forum totally agree with the submission of our Ijaw elders and the partners, and we hope that moving forward, we are going to have a collective action. Thank you.
Please, one last word from Engineer Ban, the former director of petroleum pollution in Bayelsa State. Great.
Yeah. Thank you for the organizers of this program. Well, I remain under the protocol of the first statements. Well, my name is Engineer Izon-Ebi. Well, when you talk about environmental pollution, I was directly coordinating the activities of the IOCs and gas companies. It's very sad because between 1999 and 2015 that I left Ministry of Environment, by the records that I had, the pollution sites that we collected were more than 5,000 sites. And when now we go out on GIV, where you go and then see the economic loss, apart from the human or public health problems, Bayelsa State has lost so much economically. Talking about fisheries, now when you go and then refer to those days when we were small, the fishery loss alone is into $1 trillion because most of the fishes have gone on extinction. And that is one of the causes of insecurity people are now talking about. Let me relate for it. Because in those days, our fathers and mothers, they depended on forest reserves and fisheries. And those are the things that they use in training our children. But now all has gone on extinction. Catchment rate is zero because most of the type of fishes they have migrated or some have gone on extinction. So no money to train the children. So what they do when they grow up, no food to eat. So the next thing now they go and then commit these vices that people are talking about. So this is the right time to address these issues. All our economic studies in those days, lumbering was one of the things that people were doing. Some both happened to produce Kaka Gogo that they were using in training their children. But when you go in, all these forest reserves are destroyed. If you see the massive level of destruction, you will not believe it. Let me refer to Lagos, where I went and carried out the GIV. About 1,000 hectares of mangrove trees were on extinction. That is killed totally. And these are the areas that all our fishes come to migrate, and then they now lay eggs and ash. But it has gone on extinction. So to tell you that the damage that has been done to the ecosystem, biodiversity of Bayelsa State is still measurable. So I thank those people who have taken the bull on the horn to make this report available and then presented to the UK government. Let UN and everybody should be covered so that let them come to save us. It is genocide. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagua.
Thank you very much. Our time is fast spent, so at this time, we'll quickly like to take very few questions because we have far exceeded the time we were expected to to hold this press conference. So we'd like to take from the journalists. We'd like to take very few questions, if there are any. Yes, please, can somebody?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Igbe from the Nation newspaper. It's not really a question, but I just want to know if you're going to make the report available to us. That's the environmental genocide, human and environmental cost of big oil spill in Bayelsa. Then this statement also references another report, another research, which says 16,000 infants are killed yearly, at prenatal stage or because of prenatal exposure to oil spills. So I would love to see the source for that data. If you can also make that available, that would be wonderful.
Those informations are contained in the report. So there is a link that we'll share through Emmanuel Okara for the report, so that you can access the report online and then probably get whatever information you require. Any other question or comment? Yes.
My name is Omani Salahuddin from the Sun newspaper. One of the consensus of opinion that we can deduce from this press conference is the fact that though the initiative of these reports is taken by the Bayelsa state government, but from the submission so far, it goes beyond Bayelsa state. The effect radiates across all the Niger Delta regions. So what I would like to know here is, what effort are you making to collaborate with other stakeholders in other Niger Delta region to mount pressure not only on Bayelsa state government, but the federal government as well as international communities, as some of the speakers have already mentioned? That's my question, because from the look of things, this fight cannot be done alone by the Ijaw people that initiated this press conference.
Okay. As you can see, even from the press statement, it is not only signed by people from Bayelsa State or Ijaw people. You can see the chairman, Human and Environmental Development Agency, header, is also a signatory, to this statement. And as you can see, his name is Lanre Siraju. There are other groups that are collaborating. You have Shima Williams of ERA that is also part of this engagement. So, and as our brothers, Dr. Tam George said, and also Mr. Bilate Makiruki said, there are efforts to collaborate across board. So every effort will be made to ensure that not just Bayelsa State, as Bayelsa State government has initiated this, other governments of the region should also get involved. Thank you very much.
I have to add that the journalists that are here and all of you, the press should take the lead, because we can only talk here. But after today, we want this gospel to be sung every day, the song to be outside this room. So in all your newspapers, in all your television stations, carry this report regularly. That way, all the cry we are having here we get to all the governors. And thank God we have the Senate President who is from Niger Delta. I believe this copy of this report will get to him. So you will help us take the lead in this campaign, both locally and outside the country. I believe the collaboration will come someday. Thank you.
Sorry, let me just add something. Sorry, excuse me. Let me just quickly tell you something, sir. The problem is pollution of the environment. Now, the question is, who is responsible primarily for this environmental crime? Right? Now, the crime is actually a function of the activities of the oil companies. Now, who put the oil companies? How did they get there? The federal government is responsible for giving licenses and permits for them to be there. So it is not a question of just, it's not a localized occurrence. The federal government is responsible for giving the licenses. It is primarily responsible, right, for remediating, for ameliorating, for abating the nuisance. So whilst it may be politically expedient to call in other segments of the society, essentially the party responsible is the federal government of Nigeria. After all, it collects all the resources. They don't pay to the state governments. They don't pay to the communities. They pay to the FGN. Please, sir. The state governments, the governors are trustees of the land over which they rule. Yes, the communities will go to court to sue their governors because all these spills, I've always argued, the proper plaintiff is the state governor, the state government, not the communities. Because the Land Use Act, and that is extant at the moment, right, puts the state governors as trustees for the land. So they are the proper plaintiffs. But everybody is shaking. There is a monumental failure here to be accountable. It is abdication of responsibility on a humongous scale. And it is so because the oil is from the minority area. I say it. My name is Ikoli. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. There were some questions or some answers raised online, but unfortunately we can't take those comments because we need to round up. We've far exceeded the time for this press conference. If there is no other question or comment, we would like to round up the program. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you once again. I think it's been a fruitful deliberation, no matter how depressing the topic is. And we hope that we will have awakened the empathy in people to know that genocide of any type, either in Bayelsa, the Niger Delta region, or in Nigeria, is not acceptable. I want to thank the various groups who have come together to participate in this press briefing. I want to thank the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, especially the representative who came and gave us a brief on what they had done and expect to do. And I want to thank those of you who have come here and lent your voice to this laudable effort. And most especially, as my brother Mark Yawaki said, I want to thank the members of the press and journalists who are here today. You are the ones that are saddled with carrying out and disseminating this information. We expect you to do that. We expect you to contact us if there needs be. We will be willing to come to your stations. We'll be willing to grant interviews. This must not be swept under the carpet. This genocide must not be swept under the carpet. And I expect all of us, each and every one of us, to put on our coats and have the ethic and moral responsibility to ensure that the Niger Delta is cleaned up. Thank you very much for coming.
Well, what else do we have to say, Honorable Commissioner? I think we, gentlemen of the press, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding. Like the chairman said, we are available for further engagements on this matter. It is a very serious matter that we think that every right-thinking individual in Nigeria should take very seriously. Thank you, and God bless. Please, we'll encourage us to please socialize a bit before we leave, as there are light refreshments that will go around shortly. Thank you.